Okay, I first had the idea of maybe getting hold of some containers because we'd outgrown our warehouse premises here in Bristol, and so I made some inquiries with various container companies on the internet. Had a varying degree of response, and helpfulness depending on who I spoke to. And then I came across Container Team in Weston, and I got a very friendly, informative approach. They certainly seemed to know what they were talking about. And I remember what struck me was that during the conversation, and I was talking about second-hand containers, of course, they were saying, "Oh yeah, we've got some really nice, clean containers down here. You ought to come and have a look." And I thought, well, anyone who can still be enthusiastic about what at the end of the day is metal tin boxes must be worth talking to. So I went down to Weston, had a look around their place, and they showed me various sizes of container that might be available to see what might suit us. And one of the ones they showed me into, because I'd never actually been in a container before to know sort of what they were like, they showed me in one, and I was very impressed by how clean and dry and secure they seemed to have been built. And I didn't realise quite how many you could stack on top of each other. So the one I went into, I think, was at the bottom, and there was about 3 or 4 above, which was a bit disconcerting, but obviously proved the strength of these. And of course, when they're on the ships, I suppose they probably stack them even higher than that. So we worked out what I needed for my first container. So a deal was done to have a 40-foot container delivered, and I had it painted in a dark green to make it a little bit more pleasing to look at than how they start off as. And King Heavy Haulage of Bristol were the people that actually brought that container. And the driver was very good. He took plenty of time, he didn't rush it. He had to lift the whole 40-foot container up, turn it around and put it, and because of where we needed to put it, it had to be precisely positioned, and he got it literally to the inch of where we needed it to be and made sure it was all level and everything before he left us. So we made use of that first 40-foot container a couple of years ago and found that we very soon filled it, and like anything, as soon as you've got the space you end up using it, and we found it ideal for what we needed. So earlier this year I decided I needed some more space, so went back down to Container Team, and this time 40-foot was not going to be any good, and even 30-foot wasn't any good. So what I needed, I worked out, was a 29-foot container. So put that to them. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, we'll just get a 40-foot and we'll chop the end off and we'll take off the bit you don't need and weld the end back on again. That's easy enough. It would be just as secure and just as weather-tight as it was originally. So fine, that sounded good. So I bought the bottom of these 2 containers behind me, going back earlier in the year. And this time, because it was near the building, we took advantage of having it kitted out with all the fluorescent lights before it was delivered, so that my electrician could wire into it and we'd have lighting, which we haven't got on the first one. And that got delivered fine, again by King Heavy Haulage, and that got positioned just as we wanted it to be. Started using that, and then as time went on, found that we could do with even more space, and my thoughts went back to the very first visit when they'd shown me into that container at the bottom of the pile. I thought, hang on a minute, what about if I did something similar here? So spoke to them again and said, look, what I'd like now is another identical 29-foot one created that would go on top of what we already had. Again, not a problem, they were very flexible, but what I needed for them to do this time was to cut a huge hole in the side of that container to my measurements before they delivered the second container, so that when they had then stacked it on top of the bottom one, it would then line up with a doorway that we already had off of our mezzanine inside the building. So that's been fantastic, because now we're able to walk straight from the mezzanine out onto the upper container, and then we gain access to the bottom one in the normal conventional way with the doors at the end. So we found the fact that we've now got a 40-foot and 2 29-foots in our yard absolutely great for sort of using it for excess stock storage, and we wonder how we ever would have managed without them, to be honest. So I can summarise by saying, I suppose, that thoroughly recommend Container Team. They seem a very friendly, easy bunch to get on with. They're very flexible. Basically anything you want done, anything you want converted or altered to your containers, they're very willing to do it, and I'd love to use them again.